Romans 14, that conclusion, that perspective leads us to an obligation. Those who are more mature in Christ, Paul tells us in Romans 15:1, we who are strong have an obligation to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. And so back in 14, he tells us that this means that we must strive never to put a stumbling block in front of our weaker brothers. What does it look like to put a stumbling block in front of our brothers and sisters? Well, there's two major ways that Paul lays that out in Romans 14. We can do that, one, through judging. Romans 14:13 says, "Therefore, let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother." If I moralize my opinion and then moralize this weaker brother's opinion on how they're responding to these less clear matters, issues that should be decided on, then I will become self-righteous and I will become condescending and I will look down on them. And that will put a stumbling block in front of them. Because what I'm doing is I'm basically telling them, if you were a mature Christian, you would do what I'm doing. You would have this opinion. But the problem is that their conscience won't allow them to do that. And so I'm judging them, I'm condemning them, and I might be coercing them by my posture to actually violate their conscience and then sin against God. So we don't put a stumbling block in front of our brothers and sisters by judging. We also don't put a stumbling block in front of our brothers and sisters by using our strong conscience, using our Christian liberty in such a way that leads them to violate their conscience. That's verses 14 through 23 lay this out clearly. Paul in verse 14 argues that there's nothing unclean about certain foods. Christians they're free to eat any food they would like. But anyone who is decided in their mind that certain foods are unclean, if they then participate in eating those foods, they're going to violate their conscience and actually be sinning. It'll destroy them. So we who have the right view that there's no food that's unclean, if we then use that freedom in such a way, or we require that freedom to be applied to all of the Christians in our church, strong and weak alike, we'll actually destroy our brothers. So friends, this is what this means for mature Christians. We are obligated to curtail our own rights, our own freedoms, our own liberties for the sake of our brothers. And verse 21, Paul says, "It is good not to eat meat or drink wine or do anything that causes your brother to stumble." If your brother thinks that it is sinful to drink alcohol, and then you invite them over and you have a glass of wine in front of them, you are going to be leading that brother to stumble. So this means that we, out of a desire to love our brother, Christian fellowship, curtail our rights. This also means that we keep certain opinions to ourselves. Verse 22, Paul says, "The faith that you have, keep between yourself and God." And I think by that he's simply saying that you have a strong opinion and you're right, but sometimes it's not important enough for you to trumpet every opinion. And you need to be wise and careful. And lastly, friends, our fellow church members, what this means to not put a stumbling block in front of them, it means that we should welcome our fellow church members who may have wrong opinions on things. They might be really wrong on things, but they should feel welcome. So Paul opens Romans 14 with, welcome the weak. And then in 15:7, here's the charge he gives us. Welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. Brothers, sisters, can you welcome one another as Christ welcomed you? I mean, how did Christ welcome you? How many wrong opinions did you have? How wrong were you? How dumb were you when Christ welcomed you? Oh, come on, friends. Are we that big of a deal? Are we so confident in our impressive awesomeness that we think that we just had it all together when Christ welcomed us? Can't we who have experienced the grace of Jesus Christ let that warmth and love overflow to our weaker brothers and sisters? And friends, I'm sure people divided on many issues in the church think that the other people are the weaker ones and they're the strong ones. Depending on your culture, your upbringing, your views, you think you might be the strong and the other people the weak. And that's fine, because those who are strong, they're not strong because they trumpet their opinions most loudly, but their strength is demonstrated in their willingness to set aside their preferences for the good of others.